Hello. I know. My voice is extra screwed this week. It's been an interesting one. I won't lie. Therapy on Wednesday. Recording this is now Sunday, by the way. Therapy on Wednesday was interesting. I was talking to the therapist about a lot of the sort of really small, insignificant things that happen in life, but they mount up and they mount up and they mount up. And I was talking to him about all these little things that didn't make sense a lot of time when I was sort of growing up, and horribly still kind of happen today. And it's little things to do with like how I can do the same thing as my brother, for example, but how we're treated, the outcomes are very different. And I was talking to the therapist and I was like, it feels like I've been literally pigeonholed into a very, very tight box of how to behave and how to kind of interact with the world and everybody around me, and the expectation of me versus the expectation of everybody else, really. It feels like there's this huge expectation of the sort of person that I'm supposed to be. And if I deviate from that expectation ever so slightly, I feel the wrath of Khan. And it got to a point where we were talking about stuff, and he was asking me questions, and I felt that I was making excuses for people in my family, and sort of things like, oh, they're probably behaving like that because, or they probably felt like that because. And then he just sits there and he goes, it's psychological abuse. It's like, even if it's not intentional, it's psychological abuse. And that's really, really tricky to take on board. It's really, really tricky to understand, because I always try and give people the benefit of the doubt, right? There's no instruction manual to life. There just isn't. There's no instruction manual to having kids or anything like that. And it's really tough because my own experience of my own upbringing has been very much like the way that both my parents have treated me is very different. One of my parents, I feel, respects me as a human being, and the other one of my parents, I feel, is trying or has tried to make me their version of what they expect a human to be. And as I've got older, obviously that started to cause more conflict, because I've tried to find my own self, and that's something that I don't have. I don't have a sense of who I am, or what makes me tick or anything like that, because I've been shoehorned into this tight prison of expectation. Now, the problem is, like I explained to the therapist, like, I'm 36 years old right now. I've come from a family where both my parents are still together. From the outside, it looks like a very loving home. There's both my parents, there's me and my brother, everything's great. And I said that feels like the problem, because when I've tried to speak to friends or people about stuff, because you're not from what is viewed, I guess, as like an abusive household, or, a disruptive family or anything like that, it's just, you don't really have an argument. You don't have an excuse. You just, almost like trying to make things up for drama or something like that. And it really sucks. It really sucks. It really sucks not to know who you are, but it really sucks to feel that every kind of step of your life is basically controlled because of how people will react to or respond to what you do. And it's never a positive response. It's such a clever psychological manipulation that if you do something that rubs somebody up the wrong way, I'm either met with like anger or aggression or guilt, and both of those leave me feeling pretty shit. Because if somebody makes you feeling guilty for doing something, that's not a great feeling. And the problem is, the therapist was sort of saying, going off what I've told him, that these patterns have been implemented from a very, very young age. So there's no reason, not no reason, there's no what? Like, he understands, basically, he understands why I don't know what a lot of normality is, because realistically, I've never experienced it. The hard thing is, when I've tried to move forward with things, for example, I suppose relationships are a good one, because I've always struggled with relationships and never understood why. And when I'm speaking to the therapist, he goes on about, well, our first sort of influence is, when we're kids and we're growing up and what we see around us. And for me, that was tricky, because as much as, my folks are together and depending on who you speak to, it's a loving relationship and everything else. All I remember as a kid is just the arguments, the endless amount of arguments and stuff. But my dad would always come and apologise to us as kids, and my mum would just storm out of the house. And I remember very, very specifically a time when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I just heard them having an argument downstairs when I was asleep. And my dad came up, as he usually does. My mum slams the door, jumps in the car and zooms off somewhere. My dad comes up to us and apologises to us if we woke us up or anything like this. And I remember at that age sitting there or laying there in bed thinking, but my daddy didn't do nothing wrong, From what I at that age had been brought up to right and wrong, and everything that I heard, my dad didn't do nothing wrong. So I've had this very warped perception of what relationships are, especially what a good relationship should be, if you like. And it's really messed me up big time going forwards, because like I said to the therapist, I witnessed everything that happened at home and saw how my dad got treated. And it's like, okay, so that's not how you do it, because, he's always in arguments for stuff that he's never really done anything for. So it's like, okay, don't be like that. And I guess I know that for me, especially the first couple of relationships, whatever, I was like the exact opposite of it. And then it's like, okay, I felt the wrath of that. And it's just like trying to be a people pleaser in a relationship. That was wrong as well. So I've no base to understand what is right in a relationship. And people are just like, oh, well, it's easy. You just follow your emotions. But my emotions have been warped since sort of the day one. So I only see the relationships of my friends now and how they are. And, you see it in films and stuff. And it's really hard to believe that it's a possibility for me in life to have what even I would call as a normal relationship. Now, I know every relationship has arguments and stuff, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that every relationship is like perfect and there's never any fallouts or anything like that, because I think even the most perfect relationship has to have a little bit of friction now and again, because that's what balance is all about, isn't it? But I don't know. But I have literally been turning over this whole psychological abuse thing in my head since we spoke about it. And what's really, really tricky is so many tiny little insignificant incidents have happened, and how I have been on the receiving end of the negativity of it again. And it's worn me down. I won't lie, it's worn me down. It's got to a point where I was driving back from work all last week and I had just had music on really loud, and I was just literally shouting in my car because I'm just so overwhelmed and so burnt out and exhausted with trying to break out of this prison cell of this emotional manipulation that has been put around me for my entire life. I'm trying to break out of it to find out who I am. But in doing so, I'm just causing so much unnecessary friction. And it's just not fair is the only thing I can say. It's just not fair. It's getting to the point now where my literal existence seems to be causing problems for certain individuals in my household. That's why my voice is screwed, because literally, like I say, I've been driving home and just shouting. It's the only way that I've got some form of release. It's an emotional release, don't get me wrong. But it's also very weird because it's like I'm calm and I just need to just shout just to get some stuff out. My problem there is it also feels like I'm losing my mind. I'm not going to lie to you. It genuinely feels like I am losing my mind. Because I don't know how to break out of this prison cell of emotions. It's the only way that I've known for my entire life. And as I've got into adulthood, I felt that I need to find out who I am. I need to find, whatever it is that's about me, or the things that I like, don't like, find out who that I am as the individual. But ever since I've tried to do that, from as early as, let's say, 15, the response that I've had through emotional manipulation, through other people's behaviors towards me, it's just pushed me back in the box. It's just pushed me back in the box because I've been brought up in a case of not rattling people's cages. So the moment you seem like you're upsetting somebody, especially a guardian or somebody who's supposed to be your guidance or whatever you want to call it, your guide, or, whatever, an elder that shows you the way, you upset one of those guys, you feel like, holy smokes, I've done something really wrong here. I don't know who I am. And I don't know how to find out because I am super penned in. And it's like, so the thing is, right, everybody say, well, you need to get out of the house. And I agree, I do need to get out of the house. But I'll tell you the story. So I went to university and I went 5 hours away from my home. It was pretty much one of the furthest universities away from home that I could go to. And I won't lie, one of my main reasons to go to that university was it was as far away from home as I could get. So how I decided on my university was, number one, did it do the course that I wanted to do? Yes. Was it very far away from home? Those were the two deciding factors for my choice of university. So I went to a university that was a good 5 hours away from my home. And it was my first time to attempt to try and be a little bit more grown up without hanging on to the, whatever you say, apron strings of my parents. And I was doing everything. I had to sort out, like, getting the internet put into my room and sorting all this out. And they were taking a long time to do that because it was a case of they didn't have any evidence of if I had good or bad credit. So I don't really know. I was young then anyway. I didn't pay anything like monthly. I just paid everything as cash if I could. So I didn't really have a credit trail. So yeah, that was that. But then I find out through a phone call to me that my parent has got hold of the internet provider and requested that I also get a phone line put in. And I was like, why do I need a phone line put in? It's like, oh, so that we can get hold of you, so that we can talk to you. And I remember even then, my heart sank. My heart sank because it was like, even when I'm 5 hours away from home, I can't escape. I cannot escape. And I told the therapist this, and he was like, it's because something like that is all about having and making sure there's still that little bit of control. There's still something there. And it was just so frustrating because I would get phone calls at like 6 p.m. in the evening. I'm heading out with all my uni friends to try and find out basically who I am and make memories and do whatever. And I'm there on the phone and it's, yeah, hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm just going out. Oh, you not want to talk to us? It's like, not really. I'm busy. And just the guilt that was laid on then about how much, I was neglecting the family. It's just, I'm just worn out. I'm just so worn out. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing now. I really don't. It's like I don't want to be at home. I just want to be at work just because it's time away. You know, it gets me away. I don't want to become cold and numb. But it's getting to the point where it's really mentally killing me off. Honestly, it's breaking me, to be fair to you. It really is breaking to me. But there you go. We'll see how we go this week and hope for the best, I guess. I just wish it was easier to explain to people that when you've lived within certain constraints for your entire life, you don't know what the other side of the coin is. And I was speaking to somebody and they were like, yeah, but we make our own path. And it's really, really difficult to explain to somebody that you have been put in this corner where you don't know that you can make your own path. They picked up on how I was speaking to them about stuff, and I kept saying I'm not allowed to do this, or I'm not allowed to do that. And they were like, what do you mean you're not allowed to do it? And I was talking to the therapist, and I was like, that's the depth of, if you want to call it abuse, that's the depth of the abuse has got to me, where I literally don't feel that I'm allowed to do things because of the guilt that then comes back my way, or the anger that then comes back my way from other people who almost get offended that I'm no longer under their control, or that I'm, trying to break out of their control or something. Oh boy, it's such hard work, man. I hope you guys are okay anyway. The sun's finally starting to show more and more now, so moods potentially might be lifting. A little bit of, seasonal depression or whatever should be starting to drift away maybe. I don't know. But I hope you're all good, and I hope to talk to you again a bit. Peace out. Peace and love, everybody. Love y'all.